Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Hi everybody, it's Jeff. So, a lot of talk this week about the debt ceiling, and people are rightly worried about the country defaulting on it and what the implications of that would mean for the country and possibly the world at the same time. And needless to say, it's going to be dire. Okay, a lot of things are just going to just shudder, and we won't be able to, all the progress that was made under Biden as far as the economy goes would just be flushed down the toilet. And I guess to, certain people and the right, they don't care. They would just assume that happened because their goal is not to help the country, but to help themselves to destroying America so they can win elections, okay? And that's really what it's all about. And unfortunately, a lot of people seem to be okay with that, but the majority of the country isn't. And unless we can stop minority rule in this country, we are going to forever lose our democracy, and that means we have to stand our ground. The rest of us are going to have to stand our ground against, these people here that are out to get us, okay, out to destroy the poor and the middle class, and basically just make it, very difficult for us to make a living here. So here's an article here I want to read to you about this whole thing, and it explains better than I can. It's from The Hill, and it's titled "House Democrats Reveal a Secret Plan to Force Vote on Debt Limit Hike," and it's written by Mike Lillis and Michael Schnell. Okay, House Democrats on Tuesday announced a secret plan to break through the partisan logjam that's dogging talks over the debt ceiling and threatening a government default. A strategy hatched in January and kept under wraps since then is designed to force a vote on a debt limit hike, even over the objections of Republican leaders, who control the floor and are demanding trillions of dollars in spending cuts as a condition of preventing a default. Cuts President Biden has refused to consider because of the places where they want to make those cuts, which affects a lot of people's livelihood, like Social Security and Medicaid and stuff like that. On Tuesday, less than 24 hours after the Treasury Department warned such a lapse could occur as soon as June 1st, Democratic leaders unveiled their stealthy plan, a long-shot gambit known as a discharge petition that forces floor action on legislation that's backed by a majority of House lawmakers. In a letter to fellow Democrats, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, outlined the strategy, revealing the legislative vehicle Democrats intend to use was introduced in January very quietly and without any fanfare by Representative Mark DeShaulnier, Democrat from California. And on Tuesday, during a pro forma session of the House Representative Jim McGovern, Massachusetts, the senior Democrat on the Rules Committee, introduced a, quote, special rule, unquote, designed to guide that bill to the floor if the discharge petition is successful. Quote, a dangerous default is not an option, unquote. Jeffries wrote, quote, making sure that America pays its bills and not the extreme ransom note demanded by Republicans is the only responsible course of action, unquote. The news of the Democrats' surprise strategy was first reported by the New York Times. The discharge petition, an obscure mechanism empowering 218 lawmakers to pass bills the Speaker refuses to consider, is almost never successful because it requires members of the ruling party to defy their leadership. Democrats, with 213 members, would need to find 5 Republicans willing to sign on. And some Republicans are already warning it'll never happen, especially after GOP leaders last week were successful in passing a debt ceiling package through the lower chamber, which included $4.8 trillion in deficit reduction. Quote, "They're not going to get any Republicans," unquote, said Representative Scott Perry from Pennsylvania, the head of the far-right Freedom Caucus. He said in a Tuesday phone interview, quote, "We already passed our bill," unquote. Perry also accused Democratic leaders of stifling the wishes of moderate Democrats who privately want Biden to negotiate deficit reduction strategies with GOP leaders. Quote, "You don't establish a lot of trust or a bipartisan framework by trying to threaten your way out of the situation you've created for yourself," unquote, he said. Still, some moderate Republicans have already floated a willingness to join Democrats on a discharge petition if Congress inches too close to a federal default with no resolution in sight. Representative Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania, Republican, a co-chairman of the Centrist Problem Solvers Caucus, said earlier in the year that he might do so, quote, "if that's necessary," unquote. But on Tuesday, shortly after Jeffries revealed the long-shot Democratic plan, moderate Representative Don Bacon, Republican from Nebraska, expressed opposition. The Nebraska Republican is a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, which endorsed a bipartisan debt ceiling framework last month that would suspend the debt limit through the end of the year and establish an outside commission to decrease deficit spending. Quote, "We have a system of government that requires negotiations. Jeffries' my way or the highway fails America, especially in divided government. We need grown-ups to come to the table and govern," unquote, Bacon told The Hill in a text message. The timing is crucial because the obscure rules governing a discharge petition require the underlying legislation to sit in committee for at least 30 legislative days before it can be brought to the floor. DeSaulnier's bill, which was introduced on January 30, has already met that threshold. Quote, "This was Democrats' sort of having the foresight and preparation to anticipate that we might need a break-the-glass strategy here in case of emergency, and so that's why we introduced that underlying bill," unquote, a senior Democratic aide told The Hill. The special rule will provide for the consideration of the DeSaulnier bill, the aide said, and it allows for the measure to be amended to insert language to address the debt ceiling. The next step in the process is filling a discharge petition, which will start the signature gathering process. The petition, however, cannot be filed for 7 legislative days after the special rule is introduced, meaning the earliest signatures can begin to be collected is on May 16th. If the petition garners at least 218 signatures, a vote can be forced on the special rule. Despite being in the planning stages for months, Democrat leaders have not revealed what specific debt limit language they intend to move with their discharge petition. Throughout the debate, however, Democrats have stuck behind Biden's demand for a quote-unquote clean debt limit increase, one without attendant budget provisions, and whatever proposals they insert into DeSaulnier's quote-unquote shell bill is expected to mirror that strategy. Biden invited the top 4 congressional leaders to meet at the White House next week to discuss the debt limit as the June 1st potential deadline inches closer. Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Republican, California, and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican for Kentucky, have accepted the invitation, making for a high-stakes meeting as both sides dig in their heels on how to raise the borrowing limit. The bill being used as part of the Democrats' procedural gambit is titled the, quote, Breaking the Gridlock Act, unquote, which DeSaulnier quietly introduced at the end of January. The measure, which stretches 45 pages, says it is meant to, quote, advance common sense policy provisions, unquote. It was referred to all congressional committees. The legislation, however, was not solely introduced for a discharge petition to address the debt limit. The senior Democratic aide said it could have been used to force a vote on measures pertaining to abortion or guns, for example. And that's it. So this is what's going on here. This is where we stand on that. As they said, it's a long shot, but I would say that Biden has executive powers, okay, and he has the Constitution on his side. And if he should decide that, the Republicans are just being stubborn and they're never going to give in, that he could himself just, initiate an executive order to continue business as usual in this country, and let the congressman try to sue him in the Supreme Court over it and see if they can win. Because if the Supreme Court is going to go against the Constitution, and say that, Biden shouldn't have done it, then it's pretty obvious that they're so corrupt that they won't even stand by their own piece of paper, which they swore to uphold as Supreme Court justices. Okay, so it would be a long fight in the Supreme Court, which they would find a very poor reason to try and defend the Republicans' position on. Okay, any answer that they would say, oh well, Biden should have paid. Any answer on that line would be ridiculous, and any first-year lawyer or an amateur lawyer would see through it. Okay, and like I said, I think that Biden really should just, if the Republicans want to play hardball, fine, then let's play hardball. Because they're going to learn some lessons here. I mean, it's not just so easy that you can control the Congress and just have it your way. There's contingencies against that sort of thing, and they may have to find that out on their own. I don't know, but it's certainly from this right now, as we stand right now here with this, the Republicans don't care. Okay, they're going to stick to their guns. But I'll tell you, it might sound fine to Republicans right now, the voters, to let the country default. It sounds good to them right now. But I'll tell you, when the country does default and they see what happens to their jobs, to their paychecks, to the price of living in this country going through the roof after that, they can't buy groceries anymore, or their damn their Social Security checks shrink or disappear. I can promise you a week of that, and these people are going to be screaming at their damn base to stop what the Republicans have created. Okay, I know this. Okay, Republicans are good at talking a game, but they're very bad at backing it up, because they don't understand that these things that they support are going to affect them first before anybody else. Okay, before anybody else. And, they don't like their lives as it is, obviously, because they wouldn't have been so easily duped into doing what they did on January the 6th, right? So, if their lives are so miserable now and they don't like it, imagine what's going to happen when the debt ceiling is not raised and the country defaults and we fall into another depression. What do you think is going to happen then? Okay, you thought January 6th was a bad thing? You ain't seen nothing yet. If this country defaults, you're going to see January 6 times 50, and that's going to be all across the nation, okay? All across the country. And even though the Republicans, the Trumplicans rather, in D.C. that are eager to see this happen, even they are going to be upset that it did happen, because they never really thought about what was going to happen if they got their way. So I really think that, people... when you're talking about we need to crush the government, we need to shrink it down to the size of a pea, all this talk about how bad government is. When government is unable to do its job and the country falls to pieces, then they're going to realize just how much the government really does matter, and how without it, this country can't even be, a place, a haven for people who want to have a chance at life. This country will never be the thing that we want most, a beacon of hope for people that are, subjugated by their governments, in other parts of the world. I mean, they're just never going, this will never be there. A lot of people will just, be very disappointed about how a democracy could have worked but didn't, because we over here allowed corruption to drip into every level of our system, okay? From you know, the legislative branch right up to the fucking executive branch and the judicial branch. All three branches corrupt, okay? And a country cannot operate on a government so corrupt as that. And unless we as the voters start to wise up on who we and what we vote for, that's never going to change. Okay? That's never going to change. So, you know, people, elections matter. They really do. Elections fucking matter. Too many of us have been told that they don't because idiots like, you know, the Republicans don't want us voting because it's easier for them to win when nobody votes. But it does matter. It matters a whole hill of beans, and you guys are going to have to start waking up to that fact because, you know, it's crunch time now. Every election is an important election. Every single one. I mean, they bitch, oh, Democrats always crying the end of the world. Well, that's because it is. Okay, we're always on the precipice thanks to the Republicans, and unless you start waking up to the fact that elections matter, we're going to fall off that precipice. We're already this close, this fucking close, people. This fucking close. All right, talk to you guys later.